experiment was run. And the goal of this experiment was to see how much information is an average human being exposed to on a daily basis. This was in America, and they got a sample and they conducted the experiment. The result of the experiment was that the average human in 1986 is exposed to 7 gigabytes of information per day. The average human in 1986 is exposed to 7 gigabytes of information per day. This experiment was later repeated in 2020. After several years, in 2020, the experiment was repeated, and on a larger scale, so it encompassed more participants, not just from America. And they found that the average human in 2020 is exposed to roughly 74 gigabytes of information per day. So that is 5 times more than what the average human was exposed to in 1986. 74 gigabytes of information. Just so you can conceptualize that amount of information, that is roughly 16 movies. If you were to put it into that number. 74 gigabytes of information per day. And this is dangerous. The reason why this is dangerous is because we have no way of filtering what we are exposed to. We're exposed to such a large amount of information, yet we have no control over what we are being exposed to. And it's obvious that the main reason why we are exposed to so much more information is as a result of the internet, the social media. We are exposed to that much more information. But it becomes dangerous because we can be fed wrong information. Information that can manipulate you, can give you the wrong idea of many things, and you have no way of knowing what is right and what is wrong. A study was conducted where they got a group of people and they gave them false statements, objectively false statements. So they got a group, each person, they would give him a false statement. For example, something like the moon is made out of cheese. An objectively false statement that no one can deny. However, what they would do, they would give him this statement, but they would repeat it to him throughout the day, and they would repeat it to him for several days. This repetition over a period of time led that 30% of the participants ended up believing the lie. 30% of the participants ended up believing the lie because they were constantly exposed to it. In the beginning, they agreed it was a lie. But the more they were exposed to this lie, they ended up believing it. And that is where the words of the Imam become so much more prevalent in today's society. Showcasing their wisdom, salamullahi alayhim, where the Imam says, "Man asgha ila natiqin faqad abada." Whoever listens, pays attention to a speaker, then he has worshipped him. When he says speaker, in today's terminology, you can say information. Whoever listens to and pays attention or absorbs intentionally information. فَقَدْ عَبَدَ. He has worshipped. If this natiq, if this speaker is speaking on behalf of Allah, so whatever he is saying is getting that person closer to Allah, reminding him of Allah, then that person absorbing the information, فَقَدْ عَبَدَ Allah. However, if he is paying attention and absorbing and listening to that natiq, but this time the natiq is speaking on behalf of Iblis, so anything that distances you from Allah, فَقَدْ عَبَدَ Iblis. Then he has worshipped Iblis. This means that whatever you are exposed to makes and builds your character, builds your beliefs, what you think about, what your ideas are, whether you notice it or not. So today, inshallah, we will look at social media. Looking at the possible negative impacts that social media can have in shaping our beliefs, shaping who we are as humans, and especially with our aqeedah, with our faith. And we will look at two aspects, insha'Allah ta'ala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Before beginning about the negative impacts, we have to notice something. Is that social media in of itself, the internet in of itself, isn't a bad thing. We have to acknowledge that there are many positives to social media. For example, we have so much more access to resources, to knowledge, especially the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt, our religion. If we want to ask if something is halal or haram, we're one click away from either the representative of a marja or your local sheikh. It has become so much easier to acquire this information. It has also made us more connected. If you have family and friends that are overseas, back then, you cannot see them. You had to either write them a letter or you had to call them through the home phone. You had to buy those cards, those credit cards, and then scrape the number off, and then you had a certain amount of time to call them. Now with the click of a button, you can see them and speak to them as if they are with you. The other one is that you have the freedom to create awareness for whatever you want. On social media, you have the opportunity to create awareness for the message of Aba Abdullah, for every event that comes that's related to our religion. These are positives. We cannot deny these things. May Allah keep in good health the older generation. But at times the older generation, they focus on the negative. They say that nothing has destroyed us except for the social media and the phones and everything. But there are positives. And even with the negatives, it's how we control it. It's in our hands. It's in your hand. You control how this thing affects you at the end of the day. So looking at the first negative impact that social media can have, which is misinformation. Misinformation being fed the wrong piece of information and being manipulated into accepting this as something that is correct. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'll give you an example to show you how dangerous misinformation can be on social media. A paper was written in 1998 by a man by the name of Andrew Wakefield. This person was a medical expert. He wrote an article, conducted an experiment, and the conclusion of that experiment was that vaccines cause autism. Vaccines, especially the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, cause autism amongst children. This was his conclusion. Afterwards, medical experts debunked his theory. Debunked it with every step, from the sample that he extracted, how he conducted the experiment, so on and so forth. They proved that it was wrong, and they themselves conducted experiments to prove otherwise. They also retracted his medical license. He was no longer allowed to conduct experiments or be part of that field. The journal retracted his paper. All the measures were taken to ensure that no one listens to him. But what happened? Social media caught attention of it, and it spread like wildfire. You have the conspiracy theorists, they got hold of it and they gave their theories. You have the uninformed parents, they got hold of it and they gave their theories. You even had celebrity endorsements. Celebrities that were going out to the public and saying, do not vaccinate your children. which baffles me how some people can actually idolize a celebrity and trust him, given that he's not an expert in anything. What was the result of this? The result of this was, for the consequent years, people were not vaccinating their children. And what that led to is disastrous. In just 1 year, 869,000 cases of measles occurred worldwide. That's almost 1 million children were diagnosed with that disease. And out of that 800,000, 207,000 children died as a result of the disease. So look at one piece of misinformation, 200,000 children died because of one person who decided to spread misinformation. And then you have the same thing when it comes to the misinformation of our faith. You even look during the Imam's time. You look at Muawiyah, the misinformation that he spread, to the point where after the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the people of Sham hear about it. They ask, how did Ali ibn Abi Talib die? They say that he died in sujood. What was their response? أَوَكَانَ عَلِي يُصَلِّي? And they were surprised. They would say, is it true that Ali used to pray? Look at the level of misinformation that Muawiyah drew for the people. It is because he took advantage of their ignorance. He took advantage of their ignorance. And that is what happens today. Those children that died were as a result of the ignorance of the parents. The well-informed parents vaccinated their children. They asked about it, they understood, they found out it was false. But misinformation targets the ignorant. And it uses that person's ignorance as a weapon. So the solution to this is what? And it's very obvious. Gaining knowledge. Maybe every third or fourth lecture that I do, I always emphasize this point. Gaining knowledge. This has to be a habit. Something that is in our daily life. To gain knowledge. Not just gain knowledge when you're in school. Or gain knowledge when you go to university and after that you don't do nothing. No. Min al-mahdi ila al-lahd. Seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Because that is your sword and shield. That's what protects you. When the enemies come and place misconceptions in front of the Shia, and we talked about one of them on the first night, you need to have the knowledge equipped to respond to these misconceptions. You need to be well informed to target these misconceptions and answer them, to protect your faith and your aqeedah through this knowledge. That is very important, and I cannot stress this point enough. You have so many people that subscribe to the faith of the Ahlul Bayt, but they are not well informed. People come and ask them questions. You live in a Western society. People will ask you questions. They will have misconceptions. You not being able to answer is not accepted. Is not acceptable. So you have to gain knowledge. You have to gain this understanding in order to protect your own faith. To protect at least your own family. قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. We have to be able to protect ourselves from these misconceptions that make us fall. Because the ill-informed, the ignorant, when he hears these misconceptions, he falls into it. And many of them left the faith. Many of them left the path of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. So gaining knowledge is very crucial to this point. Moving on to the second possible danger that can occur from the social media and the internet is the attachment to the dunya. Now, someone will ask, how can me using social media attach me to the dunya? I'll tell you. Social media, in many cases, has the potential to become addictive. And that is very observable with the younger generation and even some of the older generation. Social media becomes addictive. You've heard the term doom scrolling. That happens because of this addiction, and it is so dangerous that people who have conducted studies regarding how addictive social media can be is mind-baffling. You have one of the experts, Yassin, and his colleagues. They done this experiment, and the result was that excessive social media use shares characteristics with behavioral addictions such as withdrawal symptoms and cravings. Social media use becomes addictive to a point that when they wanted the participants to quit social media, they witnessed withdrawal symptoms. Do you know what withdrawal symptoms is? You hear withdrawal symptoms when it comes to what? People that are trying to quit drugs or alcohol. When they go into rehabilitation, they have withdrawal symptoms. They start sweating, they start fighting it. Those same symptoms were seen when these people wanted to quit social media. To show you how addictive it can be. One of the leading psychologists, his name is Jonathan Haidt. His words, he says, social media is more addictive than heroin. That's his words. More addictive than one of the most addictive substances. So if this is so addictive, and you see probably the average person when he looks at, you can go on your phone settings and see how much you use your phone. Many people will probably have more than 10, 15 hours of screen time per day. When you're this addicted to social media or the internet, and you look at what's in it, what are you being exposed to? 10, 15 hours a day, you will find that it is ideas and standards and beliefs that attach you to the dunya. Someone would want an example. I'll give you an example. The recent idea that has been implanted into most of the youth, the boys especially, which is what? The idea of masculinity. By certain figures, they came forth on the internet, they became prevalent, and all the youth are absorbing what is being said. The idea that you are not a man if you are not a millionaire. You are not a man if you work the 9 to 5. You are not a man if you cry or you show emotion. As a man, you should be focused on becoming a millionaire, your cars, the women. That is the idea of being a man. And the youth absorbed it. And they somehow think that this is part of the religion, which is even more baffling. Whereas religion fights this. It encourages someone to be in touch with their emotions. Crying when it comes to gaining closeness to Allah, crying over the tragedy of Imam al-Hussein. It doesn't teach us any of this. And you even have for the women, the standards that have been presented on social media. You will not be accepted if you do not put makeup on. You are not part of this society if you are wearing the hijab. Your religion is trying to control you. You are a free woman. And being free as a woman means that you wear what the latest Vogue issue tells you to wear. What the latest makeup trend is, that is being a free woman. These are the trends that are being given. And because we are so addicted to the phone, we absorb it. It's only natural that we absorb it. If you're spending 10 hours a day on the phone, and that is what's being played in front of you. Remember the experiment that we talked about? 20 to 30% of them believe the lie. That is what you'll be exposed to. You absorb it. it becomes part of who you are. Which means what? You will become dunya focused. Your focus will be the dunya. You will be addicted to it. All you think about is what's related to the dunya. You have no connection with the hereafter. You have no connection with the akhirah. Even if you are called a Muslim or a Shi'i by name. That is why Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, what does he say? الناس عبيد الدنيا والدين لعق على ألسنتهم. People are slaves of the dunya. And religion is but a movement of the tongue for them. They do not actually believe it. Why? Then he says, فَإِذَا مُحِّصُوا بِالْبَلَاءِ قَلَّ الدَّيَّانُونَ. You want to know how these people, their religion is only a movement of the tongue and they are slaves of the dunya? Look at them when they are being tested. When they are being tested, قَلَّ الدَّيَّانُونَ. Very little of them rise to the occasion. How does this happen? This happens when you are presented with a dilemma between dunya and akhirah. We are presented this dilemma in our everyday life. And sometimes in major events we are presented with this dilemma. If you have allowed yourself to absorb only what is the dunya, if you have never given yourself time for the akhirah, that means the ideas of the dunya that are only related to the dunya have shaped who you are. So when the dilemma comes, and as Imam al-Hussein says, you become a slave to the dunya, of course you are going to choose the dunya. You have no say in the matter because you have become controlled by it. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Throughout the year, how many times do we actually put faith as a focus in our lives? For some people, 40 days. The 30 days of Shahr Ramadan and the 10 days of Muharram. You have 365 days. Minus 40, that's 325 days. 325 days you are far away from Allah. You think that when the time comes and you are faced with this dilemma, you are going to choose the akhirah? Of course not. Of course not. If you are like that, and I'm speaking to those who are far, if you are like that, your choice will be that of Umar ibn Sa'd. He was faced with a dilemma. What was the dilemma? Mulk al-Ray, ruling Ray, or killing Hussein. What does he say? أَأَتْرُكُ مُلْكَ الرَّيْ وَالرَّيْ مُنْيَتِي. He says, do I leave ruling Ray? Ray what? Muniyati. What does that mean? It has been my dream to rule Ray. So where's Umar ibn Sa'd's trap? He was absorbed by the idea of ruling. It was all that he thought about. That was all that he thought about, ruling, power. So when he was given the dilemma, he chose to kill the grandson of Rasulullah for the sake of the dunya. But then, if you have allowed yourself to be absorbed by the akhirah, gaining knowledge of your faith, being more connected with your faith, making sure that your prayer is on time, making sure that you remember Allah as much as possible, making it the focal part of your life, when the dilemma comes, whether you like it or not, you will choose the akhirah. You will choose the akhirah. So when Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was presented with the dilemma, either to pledge allegiance to Yazid or to die, what does he say? ألا وإن الدعي ابن الدعي قد ركز بين اثنتين بين السلة والذلة وهيهات من الذلة. He was given the dilemma. But what did he say? He said that the illegitimate son of the illegitimate has given me two choices. To bend the knee and give him allegiance, or to die and raise my sword. وَهَيْهَاتْ مِنَ الذِّلَّةِ. And I will never be humiliated. The choice was easy for Abu Abdullah because his focus was the akhirah. His focus was Allah. So be careful what you are exposed to because it can shape who you are and who you become. Make sure that you are focused on the akhirah. Remember your akhirah. That is why our religion encourages us to remember death. Because when you remember death, you end up realizing how trivial the dunya is compared to this akhirah. How insignificant it is compared to the akhirah. Anything that's related to the akhirah, remember it, have a connection with it. The representatives of the akhirah, the representatives of Allah, which is who in our day and age? Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Remember him. Cry over him. Learn about him. This is our final hope. You have to have a connection with Imam al-Zaman. Because if you have built up the habit of focusing on him, remembering him, when the time comes and he reappears, he will also give you the dilemma. He will tell you, you have to leave everything and come join me. Will you? If you have only thought about the dunya and you have barely remembered Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman, then your choice will be, Irja' ya ibn Fatima. Return, O son of Fatima. I have my house, I have my family, my kids. I've worked so hard for all of this. You want me to leave all of this and come join you? Irja', go back. We don't need you. Or, if you have constantly remembered Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman, if you always think of him, know about him, learn about him, when he appears, the choice will be easy. It is as if you never parted with him in the first place. That yearn to be with the Imam, to never leave the Imam, to never part, not just with him, but with his principles and what he teaches. So we have to be careful of that, to ensure that we never part with the Imam. And when we look at the journey of Karbala, we see there was someone who did not want to part with her Imam. Fatima al-Alila, salamullahi alayha. A 5-year-old daughter of Imam al-Hussein. When they were going to leave Medina, she was sick. She couldn't leave with Imam al-Hussein and the family. And imagine the scene, a 5-year-old girl watching her entire family getting ready to travel and leave her alone. Heartbreaking scene. She sees Ruqayya get ready to leave. She sees Sukaina getting ready to leave. She sees Zainab, Kulthum getting ready to leave. And all she can do is sit there and look at them as if she is not part of the family anymore. When the poet describes it, he says, أنا قاعدة وحمل عنهم وكني غريبة وماني منهم ويحملون وأنا أتفكر لهم. It is as if I am not part of them anymore. After everyone packed and everyone was ready to leave, Imam al-Hussein went to Salama. He told Salama to take care of Fatima al-Alila. And then came the hardest time, the time to bid farewell. Imagine Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam having to part with his daughter, knowing he will never return. He tells her, "Oh Fatima, it is time to bid farewell." Fatima al-Alila refuses to part with her father. She tells him, "Oh father, how can you leave me alone?" He tells her, "Oh Fatima, the travel is long and tiresome, and you are sick and I cannot take you with us." She cries and Imam al-Hussein hugs her and is comforting her. He tells her, "My beloved, if we reach our destination and it is safe, I will send your uncle Al-Abbas, or I will send your brother Ali al-Akbar to come get you." She tells him, "Oh father, if that is the case, then at least leave with me Abdullah, my 6-month-old infant brother." He tells her, "My beloved, he is in need of his mother and he has to come with us." But I say, if only Fatima al-Alila knew what was going to happen to her uncle Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. If only Fatima al-Alila knew what was going to happen to her brother Ali al-Akbar. If only Fatima al-Alila knew what was going to happen to Abdullah al-Radi'. She would have died right then and there. The days came and the days went, and then they hear that the caravan of Imam al-Hussein has arrived to Medina. Fatima al-Alila is hopeful, hoping that she can see her father again. But then she hears the words of Bishr ibn Hadlam, قتل الحسين فادمعي مدرار. That, O people of Medina, Hussein has been killed. Fatima al-Alila screams out, وأبتاه وحسينا بالأمس كانوا واليوم قد رحلوا وخلفوا في سويداء القلب نيرانا. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. We ask Allah to hasten the reappearance of our Imam صاحب العصر والزمان. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج والعافية والنصر واجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه ومن شيعته ومحبيه. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات. رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.